Have you ever wondered, how long does it take to make a game by yourself? A week, a month, a year, 10 years? Well, it of course depends on the game you are making and how experienced you are, among other things. But I have a concrete example to share with you. I tracked all the hours I spent on making Mortal Glory from the very beginning up to the game's final state. So far, I haven't really had time to properly look at the data, but I figured now would be a nice time to look at the numbers, do some analysis and see if there's something interesting we can deduce from it. Hi, my name is Auro. I'm a full-time indie game developer and I'm the creator of a game called Mortal Glory. On top of that, I also make these weekly YouTube videos sharing my experiences to help you on your own game dev journey. So here's my raw data. On each line I have the date, a letter that signifies which task I had worked on, and finally how many hours I had spent on that task. Overall there are 686 lines and those amount to 1,681 hours spent on the game. I have previously mentioned that around 1,000 of those hours were used before the game was ready to release, and the rest, almost 700 hours, were used for post-release activities. The data is a bit rough at the moment, so I will do some quick adjustments. First, I will replace the letters with the proper task names. I had a few lines with the letter X, which isn't an actual task on my list. Probably some super secret task I was working on. Oh well, let's put unknown there. Next, I need to do something with my dates. I am using a civilized format, as in day, month, year. Unfortunately, Excel really doesn't want to recognize these as dates, even if I set them as dates with a custom format. After efficiently wasting some time, I concede and write a quick Python script to transform all my dates into a more barbaric format. Now Excel can understand them. Great! By the way, if you look at my hours on the first date, you might notice that I have booked 16 hours for that day. That was a Friday and a normal work day. No, I did not skip sleeping. Sometimes I actually forgot to book the hours right away, so I then did them the next day, like in this case. So my data isn't really accurate on a day-to-day basis, but on a monthly level they should be accurate. Okay, I think I am ready to do some analysis now. I did some refreshing on my pivot table skills and managed to create some tables and charts. Let's first take a look at how my total hours were split between different months. Here's the table, and here's how it looks on a line chart. As you can see, the first month in April was the busiest month. It was also already almost the middle of April when I started, so I must have really been pushing it and putting in as many hours as I could. Nothing beats that early excitement. The next 2 months are a bit lower. I don't exactly know why that is, but I was probably occupied with other things beside the game also. What I do know is that I published my Steam page on 4th of June. Preparing for that might also have had the effect that I wasn't using my hours so efficiently, trying to juggle so many different things at once. Then we have a few months of great pace, but in October there is a big drop of around 35%. At this point, my game was getting closer and closer to being finished, but there were a lot of fine-tuning tasks and bug fixing to be done. This phase was the most boring phase by far. I think it must have been weighing on me. In December, I put the finishing touches on the game. So in January, all there was left to do was some final testing, maybe a bit of fine-tuning and doing the final marketing push. I had planned to move on to my next game right after the release, but as the release went so well and the game was becoming popular, I got back to the workbench and started working on updates to the game. In April, I finished a big localization update and then started working on a DLC to the game. It seems in July I had managed to finish most of the work on it. I released the DLC on 14th of September and after that I only added a few small updates, as can be seen from the hours spent. In December I stopped tracking the hours with only 1 hour logged. To this date I still use an hour here and hour there to check up on the game, respond to comments or post a GIF or two. But it is so minor that I don't bother tracking those hours. Then let's also quickly check what all these hours actually mean on a day-to-day basis. I'll just divide the monthly number by 30 and see what we get as the average hour spent every day. Okay, so around 3 to 4 hours per day on average. That's around 25 hours per week. So kind of like a part-time job on top of the regular job. I am very proud that I managed to put in all these hours while still maintaining my full-time office job. It's safe to say that I wasn't really making that many weekend plans during this time. If you're able to utilize your weekends, let's say 8 hours on both Saturday and Sunday, that leaves around 9 hours to spread over the weekdays. A bit less than 2 hours per weekday. That's not too bad, right? Okay, but I had also tracked the hours based on the task I was doing. Why don't we take a look what the line chart looks like if you separate it into tasks? Alright, that's very messy. Maybe let's just take a look quickly at the peaks. We start off in April with lots of hours for implementation, learning and planning. Sounds reasonable to me. Implementation, by the way, is the word I use for coding and generic Unity work that doesn't really fall into any other category. Then in May, there's a lot of hours spent on graphics. Hold on, that sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? Well, I wanted to have the Steam page up and running as soon as I could, so I spent a lot of time getting the graphics and then setting them up in the game. Then with the Steam page up, I could now get back to work on the actual gameplay. In September, it seems I was starting to get done with most of the implementation work, but there's a peak with content task. This is basically doing something repeated, like creating maps, writing events, coming up with names and that sort of stuff. Okay, in October, it seems I set up the audio stuff. And in November, I am doing a lot of testing, followed by a lot of bug fixing in December. All the while, I'm also ramping up my marketing efforts, which then peak in January before the release at the end of January. After the release, I am doing some bug fixing and implementation work for new updates, but the majority of my hours go towards implementing localization, which I then release as a feature in April. After that, I start spending a lot of time working on the DLC and also ramping up the marketing again for the DLC release in September. I don't know if I can really make any thought-provoking discoveries based on these, but they all make sense to me, and I can't think of any month where I would have spent too many hours on the wrong task. If you notice something strange or curious with these lines, hit me up in the comments. Maybe this all seems normal to me because I don't know any better. Then, as we started looking at the tasks, let's also pull up a pie chart for how the total hours divide into different tasks. Alright, that's a pie with many flavors. Let's start at the top. Audio at 1%. Yeah, audio wasn't really that important part of the game, and I just bought all the music and effect sounds from the asset stores, so it didn't take much of my time. Then, bug fixing at 7% is alright, I guess. Sometimes the line between bug fixing and coding is pretty blurry. Communication at 2% is for responding to players by email or on the Steam forums. In actuality, this probably should be a bit higher than this, since often responding to something doesn't take that long and you won't log any hours for it, but over time it really adds up. I would also like to add that communication can really be surprisingly time-consuming. If a player comes up with a really thoughtful question or a comment about some feature, in return you want to provide a thoughtful answer. Sometimes it can take you a while to think things through and come up with an answer that properly represents what you think. Or maybe I have just been overdoing it. But big games have community managers for a very good reason. Then there's content at 6%. I think that's very reasonable. Could have been higher also. Anything that requires creative writing like events can take quite a bit of time, at least for me. Then DLC is there at 16%. That's a decent chunk, almost 300 hours. I am happy with the end result though, and I think those hours were worth it. Then graphics is at 8%. My game isn't really that graphically intensive, so this task didn't take so long. But still, sourcing the graphics and then setting up everything in Unity did take a fair amount of time. Implementation is the biggest task with 24% of the whole pie. Yep, makes sense. It would have been higher if I didn't separate some implementation tasks into more detailed tasks like DLC, for example. Then there's learning at 3%. This was mostly in the beginning me trying to Google how I could actually do anything in Unity. Localization took 10% of the whole project. A lot of hours again for a single feature, but it was very much worth it. You can check my localization videos for more details. Marketing is also at 10%, very reasonable. I wouldn't mind it being a lot higher also, as it's so important. I want to support myself financially through my games, and that can be hard without investing a good amount of time for marketing. I also have a few videos on marketing if you are looking for tips on that. Then there's planning at 4%. Most of this was in the beginning, trying to come up with a good collection of features for the game. Then research at 1%. Again, a very minor task that was focused in the beginning. This doesn't actually differ much from learning and planning tasks, but I guess I felt like some things didn't really fully fit into those two. Steam setup is also at 1%. This could have been higher also. There is a lot you need to do and a lot you can tinker with for your Steam page. All that can really stack up and take your time, but it seems I got off relatively easy with that. Then testing at 6%. This doesn't include all the quick testing I would do while implementing something. It's more about focused, okay, now I am testing type of testing. Knowing that, I think 6% sounds reasonable. And finally, unknown at 1%. I still don't know what this task actually was. I just know that it was in the very early phases when I was starting out. Maybe it was the secret sauce and the reason Mortal Glory did so well. Gosh, I hope not. Well, that was all the tasks. These hours also don't include all the time I have had to spend on the business side, figuring out taxes and all that fun stuff. I also tried to log in only the really dedicated hours, not for example if I was thinking about the game in a shower or things like that. Again, I don't really know if I can come up with any big revelations or action points from all this information, but I think it's at least interesting to look at and it will provide a good comparison for my future games. Hopefully it was also interesting for you to see how I use my time working on Mortal Glory. If you came up with any conclusions of your own based on this data, or if there was something you found especially interesting, let me know in the comments. I am really interested in hearing what your thoughts are about this. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.